On this week's episode of Whitetail Cribs, we're stopping in Kentucky to visit with Pierre. Terry's a GM at a manufacturing company and also works with real-world wildlife products. In this episode, he shares some of his favorite hunting stories from over the years, and he also shares an important message to all hunters that everyone should check out at the very end of this video. If you do enjoy this episode, please leave us a like and comment, and tune in next week for a fresh episode.
Hey everybody, I'm Terry Pierre. Welcome to our house. We're my wife Casey and my 3 kids. We live here in northern Kentucky. Come on in, we'll show you around. We'll start out in the backyard. I had knee reconstruction 8 weeks ago, so I had an unfortunate incident on a tractor, so I'm limping around a little bit, so you'll have to bear with me as we walk around. To start out, we'll talk a little bit. It's hunting season here in northern Kentucky. We'll talk a little bit about how I hunt. Most of the time, this is what's boots, camo. It all stays locked up here in the truck. I jump in, grab my weapon from downstairs, come in, get changed, can run out to the farm real quick. This is our out-of-state rig. This is the 3rd trailer we've been through. We're working on this right now. So this is our out-of-state hunting trailer. We hunt Illinois a lot, so we need to be able to have all of our stuff locked up, secured when we stay in a hotel. So we just got this trailer. This is, like I said, this is the 3rd one, and you keep learning stuff every single time you build a trailer for hunting. So the last time we had shelves up in the V-nose. I didn't take into consideration the size totes that we had, so stuff was odd sizes. So this morning I actually got the rails for our tree stands, our lone wolves to hang up, and tomorrow or Saturday we're going to work on laying out the shelves on the front of the trailer. This is my biggest thing that I haven't figured out yet. I got to figure out a way to haul my Quiet Cat in the trailer when we go out of town. So I do have a receiver hitch. I'm thinking maybe the best thing to do is just put it on the back of the side-by-side when we're in here, but that's why that's up in here. We're trying to figure out what to do with it. So anyway, this is what we used to hunt out of state with. We got about a month to get it finished up, ready to go. All right, so we're going to walk over here to my neighbor's garage. This garage he built a few years ago, and it's turned into the homeowners association meeting place. So as I was running out of room in my trophy room downstairs, we started putting some bucks out here. If you look up there on the hill, my son is 15 years old and he has a firewood business. So he actually comes out here and every night, well, not every night, he's a 15-year-old kid, but he comes out here and splits wood and gets it ready to sell for people in the area that want campfire wood. So like I said, this is where we call having our homeowners association meetings. We really like our house, we like the area, but the best thing about living here is 2 of my best friends live next door to me, so it makes it really nice to have people close that you can hang out with. So these are 6 bucks that I shot. The big thing that really bugs me is social media gets to the point that they put all this pressure on young hunters, and they try to even, not that I'm an accomplished hunter, but they try to go to the level that I'm at, or the level that Don Higgins is at, or the level that Mark Drury's at. They don't ever learn how to hunt. They don't learn how to kill deer. They don't learn the mistakes that you have to learn early in the process. You know, when you get to the point that you are every year trying to kill a 4.5-year-old buck or older, you have to hunt him completely different. He's a different animal. And it's really hard to go from the very beginning stages of being an outdoorsman to this. And I can tell you honestly that these 6 bucks in this room, I killed my first buck when I was 18 years old. And I'll show you him inside. It took longer to get these 6 than it will what we see downstairs in my trophy room. So a couple bucks in here. This one was the first deer that I ever shot. I think I was 21 years old. I shot him with a 270 that my late grandfather had given me to hunt with because I didn't have a rifle back then. But he was the first deer big enough that, I think he was my 3rd buck, but big enough to mount. So that one's pretty cool. This deer here, he's the smallest of any deer in here, but it was a really cool story. My grandfather had a construction business, and they were visiting from Virginia, so we went to a local junkyard that was owned by my wife's uncle. And when we were walking through the junkyard to get a part that he needed for his dump truck, I noticed these big hoof prints going down the dirt lane. And so I called my wife's uncle and said, "Hey, can I hunt?" And it was rifle season. I didn't know what I was doing. So I took a 7 mag and a lawn chair and looked for the highest point. And the highest point in that junkyard was a wrecked Budweiser beer tractor trailer. And I climbed up on top of this tractor trailer, was sitting in a lawn chair with a 7 mag, and he walks down the road and I laid it to him. The bad part was he runs between a bunch of junk cars back in a thicket, and I saw him crash, but I couldn't get him out. He's in the back of a junkyard. So I called my wife's cousin who lived close, and he comes and fires up this humongous Caterpillar track loader and just plows through all these old junk cars and pushes them out of the way. And we drug that deer out in a big cat front end loader. My wife's cousin was killed by a drunk driver a couple years later, so that buck's really special because that was a great memory that he and I had. So now that you've seen the small deer, let's go check out the big ones. All right, let's go back inside. We're going to see some good video editing skills because it takes me a long time to get down the steps. All right, so this is my man cave. This is actually my oldest daughter, Kaylin, here. One of the friends of the guys at Exodus Cameras, John Mulligan, who runs Johnny Utah Creative, I think is his social media account. He came in from Iowa to take these senior pictures for my daughter, and we actually lit softballs on fire, and she hit them, and we threw them at her, and she was fielding them. She's a sophomore at Georgetown College right now, so she was my first hunting buddy out of all the kids. So but this is my man cave. I started building it a few years ago. It's all out of, the upper half is out of pallet wood that I planed down and then used Danish oil, and then the lower half is reclaimed corrugated metal from a barn down in southern Kentucky. So I don't know, I don't know that I'm a person who likes to stockpile, but I do like everything fairly organized. So I have my tactical vest, my bows. I am a big fan of tomahawks, and I don't know why. I hope it never comes to the point where I have to use a tomahawk, but if it does, I will be ready. I do like tomahawks. I don't like reloading magazines, so if I run out of ammo already in magazines, we're in trouble. So this is something just as a FYI. If something says this, that means you probably want to buy it, just in case anybody's ever wondering. I coach high school and youth fast pitch softball, and when I blew my knee out this year, my girls on my team got me a little mount for my trophy room, so that's pretty cool. I hung it up there. So in here, you got all of the deer I consider my mature bucks. So we'll kind of go around a little bit and talk about a couple of them. This is the smallest buck in here. We just did a Euro on him. We had a long history with this guy in Illinois, and the buck that I was targeting that I wanted to shoot got shot. So we quickly went to this guy, and he was a 7-year-old. We had deerage.com. When I say that a deer was a certain age, I know it was a certain age because I had him aged. Even when I say we think, if I say he's a certain age, deerage.com does the forensic aging on him. So my buddy Patrick and I, the guy that I hunt with that have the trailer out there, we both killed 7-year-olds that year in Illinois. That was pretty cool. This is my biggest, I guess, whoopsies of any deer in this room. This deer was called Lopsy. When you actually look at him from the front, his one side's lopsided from the other. We would have swore that this deer was 5.5, based on, we had pictures of him. There's another deer that had brow tines and frame very similar to this, but when I sent this deer off, he was a target buck, and we wanted to shoot him. Not real big, but when I sent him off, he was 4.5 of all things. So that was my whoopsies. Real big Kentucky mature buck. You don't see many narrow bucks score as much as this little buck does, but his mass is just crazy. This was my daughter Kaylin, who you saw the softball pictures of her. that's in college now. This was her first buck, and it was featured in Buckmaster's magazine. She actually shot that deer with the same 270 rifle that my grandfather gave me, that I shot my first buck with, that my nephew shot his first buck with, that my son shot his first buck with. So the only time that gun comes out of the safe is when I'm taking a family member hunting, that it's their first buck. So it's kind of special that we keep that for it. This is a 6.5-year-old buck that I shot called T3 here in Kentucky on the home farm, second weekend of season last year. A Western Kentucky buck. This buck was a famous cull buck from the Higgins farm. I do have the privilege of hunting Don Higgins' home farm. So he had a couple of bucks that when you hunt his farm, you have to accept the fact, there's a target buck that you want to shoot, but there's also a list of bucks that if you see them, you have to put a tag on it. That's part of me being able to hunt there, is when he wants a buck shot. So unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever you want to look at, he came by before the target buck that I wanted to shoot, so I put an arrow through him. Don didn't think he was as old as what he was. He's 5 years old. This is Yoda. I messed up when I mounted him. I should have mounted him with his ears back. If you look here, he's got this really big drop tine that's about that wide where it comes down off of his main beam. And if I would have mounted him with the ears back, you would have been able to see it, but he was messed up on this side. This buck was on video the whole hunt, and he fell in the field, the recovery. Team Radical actually used that hunt on one of their shows one time. If you'll notice, I like to use the full range hanging systems with all of my deer, especially in a tight area like this. I like to move them around, number one, but number two, you can get different angles of them, and it's real nice. So like, this is a good buck to show you what you can, if you bring people down here. This buck was killed my first night on a lease in Indiana, and if you swing back around here, he had 2 kickers off the back. We called him Cloud 9. I forget how he came up with that name. I did not get him aged. I wish I would have, but I didn't get him aged. Another Kentucky buck. This is my favorite buck out of everything I've ever shot. This is the old guy buck. What we didn't know after I was able to kill him, the funny thing was Don was going to get it all on video, right? So he had something he had to do, and he's like, I'll be back, stay here. And it was in the middle of the day. He walks out like 20 minutes after Don leaves, and we shoot him. But we did end up sending him to deerage.com. This is the only one that I've ever gotten a certificate of, and maybe you can see that. If not, we'll get a picture of it. But he actually got aged at 10.5 years old. So he was 1 year older than what we thought. And he was just a ginormous body. Killed him the end of October. It was in the rut. He was doing at 10.5 what we all hope to be doing when we're later in life still. He was still chasing the girls. If you're ever around Don Higgins and you want to embarrass him, ask him for his autograph. He's going to hate me for showing this to you, by the way. So this was his buck called Smokey, scored 206, and he shot that buck on a Sunday evening and texted me from the blind and said, I got him, he's down. And I drove all the way to Illinois to see this buck. This was my first buck, first deer actually, shot him with a bow, a High Country Supreme. And I did not know anything about what I was doing. This buck, actually, I was on the ground. This buck walked on the back side of me, went up a hill. It was too late to shoot, I admit it. I looked up and saw just the silhouette of his head looking to my left at 20, 25 yards, drew back, let one fly where I thought his shoulder was. He was facing directly away from me with his head turned, and I shot him about a ½ inch below the butthole with a 25-12 aluminum 30-inch arrow. And just the knock was sticking out. He didn't go far, but that was my first buck, and for years I had this thing over my bed with a plaque. I was so proud of this thing. It was awesome. So one of the biggest frame Kentucky bucks I've ever seen. Shot that buck from the ground with a bow about 6 years ago. Just ginormous body. I wish that we had more bucks like that with that frame here in Kentucky, but we don't. But I was sure blessed to get a crack at that one. One of the coolest bucks I have is this is an Illinois shotgun buck with this turned down. Pretty cool story on him. I got in the stand. He was bedded about 60 yards from me in the morning, and I didn't even know he was there. Sun came up. I saw a doe started glassing around, and I just saw the tips of his antlers and sat there for an hour and a half until they got up and I was able to shoot him with a shotgun. Kansas deer, I wasn't able to actually get my hands on him after I killed him. My uncle found him the week after I was there. We were hunting the same property in back-to-back weeks, and so he got that one, got it recovered for me, and actually got it mounted for me. This buck was my first big buck. Let me slide this around. See, you can adjust all of them around so you can see them. This was my first big buck here in Kentucky, non-typical. He had double row tines on each side. Very cool buck. I had velvet pictures of this deer and never saw him hunting him with a bow. And rifle season came. I'm not too proud to use a rifle. And I shot him at about 6 yards with a 300 Win Mag. So, go figure. This corner is really special for me. My grandfather was the first one that ever got me hunting. I actually was honored that the family gave me his flag from the funeral. I got his discharge paper here. The medal, he was a gunner on the front of an amphibious assault vehicle in the Pacific during World War II. So very cool. He was the one that first got me hunting. And the reason this deer is in this corner is after every deer that I ever shot, I would call my grandfather first. He lived in Northern Virginia. This was the last deer that I shot that he was still alive. So I kind of keep all of them over here. For Chasing Giants podcast, this is where the non-magic happens, I guess. We're not real good at the techie stuff. What you hear is what we get. We don't do any post-production. When I hit record, that's what it is. When we upload it, that's what you all have. So, but that's basically my bucks. Like I said, I don't think I'm an accomplished hunter, but I can tell you I've lived the story of shooting a small buck in the butt when I didn't know what I was doing, to the point where I'm trying to strategically set up properties and hunt bucks that are 5.5 years or older. And that's a journey. And for all of you all that are putting unfair pressure on young hunters on social media to pass a buck, to do different stuff, lay off of them. Let them enjoy the journey. You have to learn that, and it can't go from day one to what we're doing or me trying to compare myself to Don Higgins. It just doesn't work. Enjoy the journey. It's a fun sport, but we have to do a little bit better job of educating and telling people what they want to do to accomplish their goal. And their goal is going to be different based on their property, who they are, where they can hunt, and what they have access to. So be supportive of each other. And everybody else always kicks you guys out. I don't get that. We're going upstairs and grilling some steaks and have some fun. So take care. Thanks for coming.